Democrats and Secretary of State have a problem with the alleged citizenship flap at the polls?
You know, they issued this clarification at 11:43 a.m. on election day, saying you don't have to just inform the citizen that you have to be a U.S. citizen to vote, and then hand them the ballot. They called it a clarification. Most clerks said it was just a total 180, a complete about-face from this policy of putting a citizenship checkoff on the application ballot.
Is this a problem for Ms. Johnson?
Well, obviously, Jocelyn Benson will try and make it.
Tell the people who she is.
She was a Democratic nominee for Secretary of State 2 years ago, whom Ruth Johnson beat, and she's making an issue of it. Look, it all gets down to voter fraud versus voter participation, the divide between the two parties, the Republicans and Democrats. Ruth Johnson claims this policy was in effect in the presidential primary. I don't remember it when I went to vote. And by the way, when I went in to vote personally, I don't know what you guys experienced, they didn't tell me. They asked me. They said, "Are you a U.S. citizen?"
Well, and then you had to fill in the little box.
And then they said, "Can I see your driver's license?" Now, I showed them my driver's license, but, you know, isn't one of the problems that people can get driver's licenses and they may not be citizens?
Yeah,
What's that going to do?
It was inconsistently enforced, because when I voted in Lansing, my ballot application didn't have the checkoff.
You're kidding.
And I specifically started asking the clerk, where is my checkoff verifying my U.S. citizenship?
As he's hunting for a story. Right.
My wife looked at me kind of suspicious, like, what are you up to?
Just shut up and vote. Right?
And the poll worker was like, you don't have to. You showed us your ID. And I said, are you sure there's not a citizenship check? And I called the city clerk, and it turns out they may have had some old applications at the polls. And then we found out from the League of Women Voters this was a problem across the state.
I started asking. Our editorial page editor was asked, "Are you a U.S. citizen?" Because he declined to check it because he knew he didn't have to. And then he said, "Yes, I am." But he thought about it and said, "There's nothing I'm carrying on me that, in fact, will prove I'm a U.S. citizen."
Well, there's nothing you're carrying right now that will prove that you're a U.S. citizen.
And for some people, that could prove intimidating.
At my polling place, there was nothing said about it. I'm filling the thing out. I forgot my glasses, so I couldn't hardly see the thing anyway. And I filled the thing out. There was not a word said about it. So, I mean, all of the experiences are...
I started asking questions of the clerk, and the guy hastily said, well, we understand this policy may not be in effect in November. And I said, really? I said, well, what's going to happen? Well, they may change it. I said, who is they? And he said, well, those people down there.
The governor vetoed a bill that would have made this mandatory.
Right.
Yes. So how is Ruth Johnson then still going forward doing it?
It should not have been on those ballot applications in the first place.
The origin of this is there was a man in Kalamazoo, an Indonesian immigrant, legal immigrant. Oh. He went to register to get a driver's license around 2007. I've interviewed this guy. And when he was registered to vote, when he was registered to get a driver's license, they asked him, would you like to register to vote today as part of the motor voter law? And he didn't know. He says he didn't know any difference, and he was registered to vote. He voted in 2008. He told me he voted for McCain, by the way. And he then when he went to apply for U.S. citizenship to get naturalized, he was asked as part of the questionnaire, have you ever voted? And he factually, truthfully said yes. And then he was denied citizenship.
Based on that?
Based on that.
Can they do that?
I've talked to immigration attorneys across the state, and they say that this happens dozens of times a year. Where people,
and Ruth Johnson cited that.
And he almost got deported over this.
Okay, there's one. Look at the people say there was a guy was quoted, we've had more UFO sightings than we have voter fraud. Okay, I thought that was funny at the time when I read it, apparently not. But is there a voter fraud problem in this state that we need to address? That is the question on the table.
The Democrats will always say no, and the Republicans say there shouldn't even be the suspicion that there might be voter fraud, and they will come up with atrocities and stories.
I don't know if it's
ad nauseum.
If it's fraud, but you know, the certified voter file is something like 106% of the total voting population of the state. That's a problem.
Right?
There are people who have left the state or passed away who are still on the voter registration file because we don't have a uniform system in this country.
And maybe the question is, there isn't a uniform system, and I don't want the federal government to start taking over voter registration. But the question is, do we care? should people have to affirm some way or another that they are a U.S. citizen before
All
they
right,
vote?
go ahead.
You affirm that when you register to vote. You shouldn't have to affirm it again
All
at
right,
the polls.
speaking of voter fraud, watch this segue. The McCotter investigation is now over. What